All right. Let me check my phone's battery. Oh, it's not going to tell me. That's real helpful, phone. Maybe I'll just switch for the next session just to be on the
Just
safe
like switch
side.
between just in case.
Yeah, I'm really worried about my phone dying. It always dies during my. Oh, but I don't know.
Is it gonna
It
do the
always
thing?
dies during my hour-long regular lives, and we're going longer than.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, I'm hoping it's charging. I don't know.
All right.
But
So
shall we start again?
I am ready to start again. You're ready to start again? Here we go with episode 2.
All
And
right. Let me get the verbiage up. I'm on closing credits. That's not going to be helpful.
that
All
always
right.
gets me. I'm like, wait, I'm
Yeah.
on closing credits.
All right. Ready?
And push. Are we clapping? I forget if we're clapping.
Well, hello there. I'm Gail Carriger.
And I'm Piper J. Drake.
And you're listening to 20-Minute Delay.
A podcast about travel.
Because travel never goes how you expect. And these days, it never goes anywhere.
One hopes.
One hopes, yes.
One hopes. All right. But today, in this episode, we will be talking about movies we love about travel with a strong sense of place.
Yes. So we're talking about movies that are particularly evocative of a location that either makes you want to travel there, or if you have traveled there, really make you nostalgic for that trip or for that sense memory. In my case, I'm picking only upbeat, positive movies because that's what I love. Um, but and I also have a series that I'm choosing. But Piper, what about you? How did you approach this topic?
I thought about places that I wanted to go to after having watched that movie because I just felt so immersive. And it was just the experience left me with such a good feeling that I was like, wow, I want to see this thing. I want to see this place. So, for example, back in the day when we were more on forums than we were on social media platforms, like a lot of people spend a lot of time on Facebook and Twitter now, but it used to be that you'd spend a lot of time in a particular forum. And I used to be on the Mega Tokyo forums a lot. And a whole bunch of different people on that forum used to watch a lot of anime. And some anime had featured specific places in Tokyo. So when somebody had gotten lucky enough to go to Japan, they would visit certain places in Tokyo that was featured in the anime. And so, for example, the statue of Hachi, the dog. And there is a movie now. There's like a live action real movie. I think Richard Gere or somebody's in it. That is about this dog who is super well known. And he has a statue. And so people would go there. But other people would actually go to the locations and take on the pose of the anime character.
Of course. It's kind of like a travel cosplay thing.
Exactly. And so the movies that I picked for today were more Western-made movies, but that made me feel like, wow, I want to go find that place and experience that experience. So that's what I'm doing.
I took a slightly different tactic. So I chose one movie or one series that represents the place I want to go to, and then two that represent places I've been. But these movies, I rewatch these movies regularly because they remind me of those places, and I love those places so much. And I did that because one of the things I thought might be fun to discuss, and I don't know if you have this concept, Piper, but both you and I have also lived in multiple different places in different parts of the world, and in different parts of the United States. And I think of certain places, even if I've not lived there, as heart homes. And that means I can imagine myself living there. And for me, there's a very strong distinction between places where I legitimately just adore them and I loved traveling there and I love being there, but I could never imagine myself actually living there. There is a difference to a place where I love it because it's a great place to vacation and a
Mm-hmm.
place where I can literally see myself there, at least for a time, if maybe not forever. Um,
So
and
maybe
so,
at the end of this episode, instead of our gadget pick, we talk about heart homes
sure,
as our
that sounds like a
picks.
great thing. I will
All right.
make a note about heart homes because I was gonna ask if you had this concept yourself.
I
Um,
absolutely do. So I'm here
okay,
for it.
great, great, awesome. Okay, so I started the last episode we did. So why don't you start this time around? So what is your first pick?
I think when we thought about this topic, and I love the fact that you suggested it, the first one that came to mind for me was Under the Tuscan Sun.
Oh, dude, that's the first one on my list.
Oh no!
That's okay. We can both talk about it.
We can both talk about it, right? So that is a 2003 romance slash drama.
It's a
Um,
memoir.
it is a memoir, and there's a book, but I didn't read the book. Right? Like I watched the movie, and Diane Lane, I think, is in it, according to the internet. And here's the thing:
It's so good.
it is such a good movie. And the other thing about it is I watched it after I got divorced, and the main character is getting through a divorce. So obviously I had a sense of resonance with the situation of the main character. But what I really loved is she went to Italy, which I've never been to Italy. And she was on a tour. And it was a kind of funny tour, and it was great. I loved it. But the way that she sat in a courtyard and she was writing a postcard for a fellow person on the tour, and she's talking about these warm grapes that she bought in a paper bag. And that's not how a lot of people in the US enjoy their grapes. They enjoy them chilled, they enjoy them washed, right? Like you buy them, you bring home, you wash them. Sometimes they're stored in the refrigerator, which, honest to goodness, you lose a lot of flavor from your tomatoes and your fruit when you keep your tomatoes, which are fruit, and your fruit in the refrigerator. And because they're chilled, you lose a lot of flavor. So the fact she is sitting in this sun-heated courtyard, again with the sun-heated courtyards, and tasting this fruit straight out of a paper bag that she bought from a vendor. And then she also saw this other woman and who's enjoying soft ice cream and like also picking up little baby chicks and letting the baby chicks like fluff up against her face. And I was like, I want to go to this place and experience this stuff.
The description she gives about the grapes is it's like tasting purple on your
Yes.
tongue, like a bird. And I was like, oh, that's so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, and there's a funny part where she eats an olive straight off a tree, which no,
It's
don't
disgusting.
ever do that. Like,
And
oops.
there's a lot of food. She is also a cook. She's a writer, which we
Mhm.
identify with, and then she's also a cook, which we identify with, and she cooks to procrastinate writing, which
We identify with. And she starts cooking for the people around her because it makes her happy, which
Yeah.
we also
Which is-
identify
we
with.
also identify like cooking as a familial thing, and that is part of this. Is there's an incredible thread of found family as part
Yes.
of this story, which I love so much. She basically adopts a Polish immigrant kid, and then there's
It
these
has a
sweet little
best friend that
romances,
ends
and
up
her best friend ends up coming to live with her. Oh, it's I know it is cheesy. It has
It's
some
wonderful.
trope issues, but it's also wonderful.
And the food,
I chose
just trying all
and
of
the
the
food and the food and that's the thing is I straight up did not like Italian food until I lived in Italy and I lived in Tuscany, and then I was like, oh, I get it. Like I totally get it. Yeah, and that for me, that is why I love this movie so much. Is it reminds me of living there and so perfectly. So the place I lived and excavated in Tuscany is very near to the place she buys the house. Everything about the setting is exactly like, because I lived in a rundown old manor house in Tuscany when we were excavating. That's where they put us up, the field supervisor. And it's like the same colors, the same, like if you've lived like you can literally smell. I could go right back to the smell of the kitchen where Peppina, who took care of us and cooked for us, would be, and I would always go in and watch her cook. even after excavating all day, because I was like, I just want to learn at the feat of greatness, which was this little old grandmother who was cooking for us.
Uh,
Yeah,
and it was
it's
actually kind of funny.
it's so
Right around the
perfect.
time that I had watched that movie, I also saw a travel magazine that was offering trips to the Tuscany area in which you stay at a family home and you spend the morning helping them cook for the day. And then you
Oh,
spend the
honey.
afternoon walking around and enjoying, and then you come back for dinner later that night and you enjoy the food that you had started to prepare earlier in the day. And I was like, sign me up. I want to do
So
that.
my plan, there is I hope it will still exist in the future, but there is a bicycle food tour of northern Italy that I am dying to go on. My partner and I are both like born and raised on bicycles, and so we are really comfortable biking, and so we really want to do that. And then the other thing is, in Italy there's a blogger I follow called Taverna Mediterranea, who does recreated Roman dishes, and she does an immersive week-long cooking where you live in Tuscany
Ah!
in an Italian manor house and learn how to cook authentic Roman, archaeologically sourced Roman evidenced cuisine.
Ah!
And I am dying to do
That
this.
sounds so good.
I know. So
Ah!
yeah, let's bring this back around to
Sorry.
Under the Tuscan Sun, though. Under the Tuscan Sun it is a romanticized notion, but I'm sorry, I romanticize that part of the world. I can't help it. I have such like glorious memories of, even though it was brutal. I mean, excavating was rough, but those 2 years there, I just have the most profound memories. And I can pick up this movie, I own it, and I rewatch it regularly.
I'm going to have to watch it again
so,
after this because we just
yeah,
talked about it. I need to watch it
it
again.
just reminds me so much of that place
Oh.
and that time. It's also set in like right around the same, it's in the 90s, and it's set around the same time that I was there. So
Okay.
anyway, so that was our first one. It was a co-recommendation.
And we did not plan that. Neither of us shared what our
did.
recommendations were going to be.
We specifically did it.
But it happened.
So so I'll go second then, although I also just talked. And my second choice is Crazy Rich Asians, for Singapore. Like Tuscany, and I should say for Tuscany, we'll talk about this at the end. Never mind. We'll talk about the heart home things at the end. But Singapore is one of those for me. It is one of my favorite places on the planet, without question. Even though I only spent a couple of weeks there, I did not want to leave. I literally was like, can we just move here? I just want to stay here. I don't want to go anywhere else.
And keep nomming on all the good street foods.
Oh my God. So I went to Singapore before I saw the movie Crazy Rich Asians, and it did the same thing that Under the Tuscan Sun did for me, which is it just reminded me so much of being there. Even though I did not, be very clear, I did not experience the Crazy Rich Asians side of Singapore.
Although that's fun to watch.
That was really fun to watch. But but it still shows Singapore and at its peak, and I just love everything about it. I love, again, it's another place where there's a very specific kind of weight to the air there, in terms, because it is on the equator, and it experiences very high humidity, but it also has so much of its infrastructure air conditioned that it has this like very strong contrast between being inside and being outside, and that reads really clearly on the screen in Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah.
And also, again, the food. Like the food in Singapore is insane. I mean, there's a reason it made my list of the top buffets I've ever been to in my life, but specifically my love for Singapore is hawker centers, and the like familial nature of those places where literally groups of families eat publicly at hawker centers regularly in Singapore. And so you get, like, as a tourist, you get this experience, and it's a very, very multicultural place, Singapore. Mm-hmm. There's just extremely multicultural, both in the cuisine and in the residents. And you see that at its most clear, I felt like, at the hawker centers, where they have like halal trays, and it's so amazing. So for me, so Crazy Rich Asians is a revisit for that. Plus, I really like the movie.
That's so awesome. All right. So for me, I gonna pull up the Asian dramas. So just recently, I went down the YouTube rabbit hole because I was unsatisfied with Netflix. Although Netflix has, to their credit, been showing a lot more Asian dramas from quite a few different countries. And a bit of a surprise to me from Thailand, these Asian dramas on Netflix. But they kind of led me down a rabbit hole into YouTube land. And there is a series called Boy for Rent on YouTube that kind of, see, from a Japanese anime perspective, I'm a fan of Ouran High School Host Club. So back when I first watched Ouran High School Host Club, which is an incredibly idealized, cleaned up, innocent version of what host clubs actually are, I've always been fascinated with host clubs and have wanted to go, but good little Thai girls definitely don't go to those. And in Japan, I could never get anybody to go with me. Plus the smoking, I'd probably die 2 feet in the door because of my asthma. So it wasn't going to happen. But Boy for Rent has that concept of a young girl gets this flyer, a boy for rent, and her best friend, her roommate, gives her the idea of renting a boy to teach her how to to be an adult when it comes to the topics of romance. So she goes and she makes a request for someone who can teach her how to love like an adult, because she's very, very innocent and naive in those ways. And the guy that she likes prefers more mature women who are more experienced and know what they want and can be enticing. So she wants to learn how to be like that for this guy that she really, really likes. And in contrast, another girl who gets the same flyer, they actually meet in a parking lot, wants a boy from Boy for Rent who can entice her to cheat on her boyfriend because her boyfriend is cheating on her and she wants a distraction. The irony is girl number one, naive girl who needs boy to teach how to love adult like, ends up with a boy who's the boyfriend of girl number two. And girl number two ends up with the number one boy who happens to be the boy that girl number one likes and doesn't know. Neither of them knows that either of these boys work for Boy for Rent. The reason why this really hit me, though, in setting perspective, is all of them go to university in Thailand. And university life was something where when I was a kid, my parents would send me to stay with aunts and uncles, and therefore I was going to be going to school because school was in session. Of course, during my summer vacation from the U.S., I would be popped into a uniform and sent to school. And the school system that I was sent to was a K through 12 that was on a university campus. And so not only did I have uncles who taught at that K through 12 school, at least one uncle who was the teacher and also the basketball coach, but also I had a cousin going to that university. And so I really had that university life of what campus looks like and where you go to eat for food. And so watching these Asian dramas and watching them hang out and have food at these cement tables with benches and how they've been carved to be aesthetically very comfortable and cool, but they're cement. Easy to wipe down. They're not wooden picnic tables. They're not metal because those get hot, right? Like these are cement. And that coolness, or like the way that their food is served in these little baggies that they'll put on a plate, right? Or like even back then they used to do even sodas or soft drinks. They would take a bag and they'd put a rubber band around the corner and you'd hold it with your thumb and pinky and they'd drop a straw in it and you'd sip your soda from a bag and just be holding it like a water balloon. That kind of stuff, I see it in Asian drama and it calls back to my childhood. It calls back to my experiences living in Thailand for whole summers. And it particularly in Boy for Rent, they also go to Hua Hin, which is a place that, gosh, I'm starting to lose my language here. Tale, they go to the beach and the ocean there at Hua Hin. And that's a really, really great place to go. And then they also go and they go to a dog cafe while they're there. Which is not anything that any of my family ever let me do while I was in Thailand yet. So I'm going to have to do it now that I'm an adult and I have, a partner, so they don't feel like, because the problem was before, whenever I was not married, my family would be like, you have to have like aunts, uncles, and like a bajillion cousins with you everywhere you go. And so I wouldn't want to put them out or or take up too much of their time with the places that I wanted to go. So it had to be stuff that they were planning to take me to anyway. So asking to go to a dog cafe was kind of putting a lot of people out of their way, right? Yeah. Unless they also wanted to do it. And it was also something that I couldn't argue was towards my education. Like if I could argue an aquarium was towards my education, they'd take me in a heartbeat. But a dog cafe is way harder to argue.
So way harder to convince people.
And they really didn't have them when I was a kid anyway. But now I'm an adult. I've got a partner that my family likes. We're going to go to a dog cafe next time we go to Thailand.
Done. I'll go to a dog cafe with you, Piper.
They have very lovely treats in a separate section for humans to eat before you go play with the dogs too. But they do a dog cafe in the show. And there's also a really cool club scene. Right? And I was never allowed to go to clubs as a good little girl. I still get side-eye from my family if I even show interest in going to clubs, so I'm not sure I can make it, but we might go.
I'm up for it. I've been watching, there's a series that's mostly set in the club scene in Bangkok on Netflix right now, which is like Bangkok Nights, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I know nothing about it. Like that would be, I'd be watching it like a tourist. I know nothing about the club scene. But they also have a night market in Boy for Rent where two of the characters go to the night market and all the stalls and all the vendors and all of the different things that they have to try to eat and share with each other, and the little bits and baubles that you can look at to potentially buy as well, like that market scene. And so Boy for Rent is really fun from all those angles of trying all these things and going into these cafes and the way that you eat and your day-to-day slice of life feeling of Thailand. But it also is a zany, cute, shenanigans-filled, slightly scandalous. Since when did Asian dramas, particularly Thai dramas, have boys who take their shirts off? Oh my gosh.
All the time.
My head exploded. I'm so scandalized. Like, I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, I was raised that this was so bad. Like,
it even has a special word, which of course I don't know because I'm not immersed enough in the fandom of Asian dramas, but there's a specific word for a Thai drama where you get skin.
Oh, yeah. I don't know the word. All I know is that when you see this, like, I could hear my mom's voice screaming in my head, bo, bo, right? And I look at the skirts on these girls, and my skirts were at the ankle. My skirts were at the ankle. Like, I wore the white button-up shirt with my little university pin on the lapel, and I had a belt, like a cute little trendy belt around this black skirt or a navy skirt, but they hit my ankles. My ankles. Now you're lucky if they go to the knees.
Yeah.
Scandal.
Okay. So we're gonna dovetail real quick, and I'm gonna ask you an insider trader question, which is, you've been watching college Thai dramas. Are all the engineering department gay? Because that's gonna transition to my next pick.
They're not all, but I mean,
yeah, the engineering department in most the Thai dramas I've been watching is predominantly gay, and it is a joke within the BL drama watchers. So which brings me to my pick.
I can say my dad is an engineer, so not all.
Not
but
all,
maybe some.
but...
We could ask him, and I could try not to get in trouble for it.
Anyway, it's a thing in BL dramas, and that is my next pick. So I have been on an embarrassingly deep dive into the crazy world of Asian BL dramas, specifically those that have been coming out of Thailand, which occasioned me calling up Piper and demanding her explain a bunch of stuff to me on the phone recently, and also insist that as soon as humanly possible, we travel to Thailand, because we're going. It does exactly what Piper is talking about, which is these dramas show specifically collegiate, and in some cases high school, but the ones that interest me are collegiate and older, lives, and mostly the importance of family and food, and also they're just like incredibly good at portraying nuances of Thai culture, like the way and the use of honorifics and in language. And it's so fascinating to me, especially as someone who's very interested in language, but also as someone who's very interested in food, which brings me to my pick. My pick is a series. So this is what happens with Thai dramas, is suddenly you're in for 17 hours. Sorry, everybody. It's worth it. So I have a password protected blog post. If any of you out there are specifically interested in BL dramas, specifically those from Thailand, you can send me an email or drop me a line or get a hold of me somehow, and I will send you the link and the password to take a look at them. because they're exhaustive treatises, because there are some serious trope problems from a romance and an author perspective.
Yes, there are
And from a
content
queer
warnings.
and content warnings, and from a queer perspective with some of these.
Yeah.
So, but I will judiciously pick the one that I think is the best representative of the food side of the equation. And that is the like truly great and truly dramatic and very soap opera-y Until We Meet Again, which is a reincarnation story. And set in Thailand, and it is set simultaneously in 2019 and in 1989. So it's set at two different times. And this is where my trigger warnings come in. The 1989 love story is tragic, and it is suicide, and it is depicted. So if that is a trigger for you, don't watch the series.
Watch this one. No.
But if you're okay with, there's also a little bit of homophobia, specifically from the historical set story arc. And then the love relationship between the two main characters is very semi-uke. So if you are fond of yoi, then you'll be fine with it. If you are queer, it is a heterosexual dysmorphic dynamic that is imposed on a gay relationship. And so you should be prepared for that, where one is acting the part of the masculine heroic figure, and one is acting the part of the feminine. And it is very passive aggressive and all of those things. Although I will say, you can think of it as a DS dynamic. This is one of the least offensive while exploring that dynamic. But the POV character, Uke character, the submissive character, his primary love language is food, and he is an amazing cook. And he is also particularly interested in historic Thai desserts. And so he talks a lot about the history of the desserts, how they're made. You get to see him cooking all the time. Like I said, it's his primary love language. So
I need to go find this now.
He is gifting all of his friends with food all the time, and they're always talking about the meaning of it. And it is totally, he literally rescues his lovers' family relationships with food, right? So
do you remember some of the desserts?
Lam gung is one of them, which is like a sort of gelatinous dessert in a little cup. Like there's
yeah,
and there's a hard. I'm sorry. There's so many.
That's okay. We'll go looking.
It's so that's my series recommendation, because it gives this like intense insight. So, and you also travel with the characters, which you don't often in Thai dramas. You travel with the characters to their home lives, so you get to see what family life is like. Yeah, it's a really fun series, and it plays on the red thread trope, which is a trope that a lot of Asian dramas. Yeah. So the families of the couple that commits suicide, which is a gay couple, and they commit suicide, mutual suicides, because they aren't allowed to be together. Sorry, but it's pretty obvious from the get-go. The families kind of accidentally link them back, or intentionally link them back to destiny with the red thread. And so the primary romance between Dean and Parm is about the two of them both falling in love and like this very sweet, slow courtship, but also they're kind of being ruined by their past, and how they cope with each other and forgive each other for what they did to each other back then. So yes, it is an adorable series. It is called Until We Meet Again. The other problem, you can find it on YouTube. The other problem is it is on YouTube. So the captioning and the videography is not great. But I think it's worth it for the food alone, if not for it. It is one of the BL dramas that I know of that has the best written, most cohesive plot line. Oh, and there's a great, like, the friendship groups are great. The friendship and family groups are really, really cute as well. So you get like other little side romances that are adorable.
Oh my gosh.
So that's my recommendation. As with a lot of Thai dramas, a lot of Asian dramas in general, particularly the ones that have comedy, although this is a drama, so it has less comedic moments. There are sound effects, and there is like the swelling pop music. If the actors are not going to get across the emotion, then the music and the sound effects are going to do it for you, right? So there is that aspect as well. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a good kind of entree into the oeuvre if you want to give it a try. And boy, do I want to go to Thailand.
So, will you forgive me if my recommendation, because we're running long on time, is another Thai drama?
Nope, because this is our show and we can do whatever we want.
All right. So you're gonna forgive me. That's it.
Yeah.
So the English way to find this drama is they call it Love Destiny. But in Thai, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong because it's long and I haven't actually heard anybody pronounce this yet. But Bupe Sanawiwat. Bupe Saniwat. I could get that wrong because I have a tendency to get the tonals wrong. I'm terribly accented in Thai. So my Thai language is good enough for me to be able to travel through Thailand and be recognizable as a kid that was born in the United States but speaks fluent Thai. Like, my accent is very, very strong, and you always see people grin because I sound like a teenager. Right? I don't sound refined. I don't sound sophisticated. But everybody understands what I'm saying and I'm able to communicate very clearly. So my pronunciation is not what you want to go on. So in any case, this Love Destiny is a travel back in time alt history in which the main character's soul is shot back in time to the Ayutthaya time period, which setting wise is so fascinating because historically accurate. Ayutthaya used to be the capital of Thailand, and the clothing and the food, and it's so accessible because the character is from the contemporary time period and experience with you, and it happens to be an archaeology student, and that's why she can figure out how to blend.
It's Portal Fantasy. That's
it
so
is.
Cool. Oh my god.
Yes.
I love it. Love it.
And the way I didn't originally want to watch this series. Like, I wasn't hooked by the first episode, right? Just warning you. And it turns out my mom got me to watch this series because she both reads the books, and they're amazing, and they're only available in Thai. And my reading level in Thai is around 3rd grade Japanese manga translated in Thai, and this is an adult novel, so it would take me a long time to work my way through this. The movie, or like the series, I should say, and it's a long series, Channel 3, available on YouTube, now subtitled. It's accessible. It's available in Thailand on Netflix, but not on US Netflix. What is life? So in any way, I think they're still waiting to subtitle it for real for US Netflix, or maybe the rights, because this particular author is pretty smart about the rights. But in any case, the way that my mom got me, she started sending me clips from the show in which your heroine starts to create and make contemporary favorite foods that her mother taught her to make for this Ayutthaya historical Thai family. And because she's making these tastes, some of my favorite things that my mom used to make that could sour your stomach if you don't have a good stomach is she used to take green mango, like unripe green mango, the same way you would take like green apples, sour apples, right? She'd thin slice them, and she'd make this dip that was brown sugar and dried shrimp and dried fish and Thai hot peppers and garlic and shallot, and it created this dipping sauce that was both salty and sweet and a huge jam-packed umami flavor that you dip this super, super sour, slightly crisp mango into, and it just explode over your tongue and your mouth and blow your tiny little mind.
Oh,
and she makes
so
this dish. I can make it for you, by the way.
Oh,
I've made it for Matthew. So
Matthew and I incidentally both frickin' love sour stuff. We are like denizens of sour, the boy and I, and this just sounds so good. Oh
gosh, it does so many things.
On. I'm like,
so that was the first clip,
the...
right? That was the first clip. And then the second clip where she really wins over the mother-in-law, she makes these huge giant prawns grilled over coals. So you get that really nice charcoaling around the shell of the prawn when you open it up. And she makes that dip that you like that I make, where it's like the fish sauce and the lemon juice and the garlic and the shallots and the Thai hot pepper. It's super, super spicy that you're dipping.
Oh, God.
So I made that. And then the mother-in-law returns and teaches her this ancient recipe for where you take savory ground pork, mixed with a whole bunch of stuff like coriander roots, not seeds, not leaves, the roots, um, salt, pepper, hot pepper, stuff like that, into this ground pork mixture, and you make these into tiny meatballs, and then you wrap them in egg noodles,
Oh,
and
God.
then you deep fry them as little balls of wrapped in noodles, deep fried, and then you have the sweet chili sauce kind of dip that you would dip this into and crunch into and get that savory pork. Crazy meal. I'm recreating that. Right, so I'm watching all of these foods, and in there is a historical character who invented Phoi Thang and Tong Yip, which are two ancient Thai desserts, mostly egg yolk and sugar, and they're cooked in sugar syrup so that they make like little golden flour, or it's like little golden threads that they're gathered up and wrapped into like little bundles. Now, the problem is if you don't eat them fresh, because I only like them fresh. If you don't eat them fresh, they harden and become crystallized, and that is not my thing. Some people like them, some people eat them. They're like, oh, it's a very tasty candy. No, 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 friends. Phoi Thang and Tong Yip, the best way to eat them is when they're fresh and they're soft and they're almost delicately cakey and melt in your mouth almost like honey.
We gotta stop soon. I'm getting hungry.
So yes, this show was all about that and the Ayutthaya time period and watching boat races and like trying to recreate what that setting was like. And this archaeologist living her dream of I've been studying this place and now I'm seeing it. And also going to the bathroom in it. Like that was shenanigans and fun, right? Like, oh dear. And then when she had her period, she really didn't know what to do, and that was shenanigans.
That is something I always. This is a weird thing to say, but I always applaud historical or fantasy authors writing young adult when they do how do we deal with our
like
period?
How do we deal with this?
How do we go to the bathroom? Those are things to think about.
Yeah,
and they're part of setting, right?
But also the ancient homes and how they were set up. Get a lot of that in the series,
cool.
which is really cool. And she actually gets like she loves a lot of it, but she just really needs a modern pillow, so she makes one, and she makes the servant one with her, and they're all like, what are you talking about? And then she makes one for everybody in the family. Yeah, she's like, nope. Like, well, they have these head pillows that are like rectangular, very firm head pillows, but they're like this, so you can't like roll. You've got to be you sleep on your back and that's it, or you sleep on your side and that's it. You can't roll or you're off the pillow. And so she made a real
big one.
Yeah, she made a contemporary pillow, and then she made them for everybody in the family. And they're all like, ooh, this is cool. So obviously, like, Doctor Who would have problems with her. But then again, you know what? He brought a banana to a party, and he might have invented the banana daiquiri. So let's not Doctor Who. Anyway, so that's my last recommendation.
Wait, repeat the name again for everybody.
So the English name, if you want to go search for it, is Love Destiny. And it's on YouTube.
You probably want to put in the appended words ENG space SUB, which is how also for Until You Again and all of our Thai drama recommendations, you want ENG SUB because that means English subtitles.
Yeah. So good luck, but totally worth it. I think Thai Channel 3 has all the episodes, and they have been subtitled. So they're actually easily findable by the actual TV channel, but they've also got a bajillion other shows up there, so good luck like sorting through them all.
And on that note, we're gonna quickly move on to our gadget picks.
Well, the gadget picks this time is actually your heart homes.
Heart homes. So I'm just gonna say my three, and because we don't have a lot of time, so I'm not gonna really do more. But two of them I've already mentioned. One of them is Northern Tuscany. Specifically for me, it's the Como Lake District in the mountains. I love that part of the world, and I can easily see myself living there. In fact, my partner and I were discussing where we would be if we'd never met each other, and I was like, I would be living in Italy without question, because as a writer, I can pretty much live wherever there's internet. That's all I need. Yep. My second one is one, again, already talked about, and that's Singapore. I would love to live in Singapore. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And then my third pick is Strasbourg in the Alsace regions of France, which would be the hardest on this list because I don't speak either German or French. But it's very, very rare for me to fall in love with a city in the of a European city in the way that I fell in love with Strasbourg. So that's my other choice. Those are my three. Piper, what do you pick three?
I would go back to Thailand as an expat, not as a good little Thai girl, because I just don't have the cultural sensibility for that. But as an expat, I would definitely go back to Thailand and live there. I have family. I love it there. I can definitely move through the world there. And
A specific part? Do you have a place?
so here's the thing, I'm a bit torn because I really, really enjoy the eastern side of Thailand, just an hour outside of Bangkok, because I really wouldn't live in Bangkok. Personally, I like to visit, but I wouldn't live there. It's just a little too heavy on the pollution, and the city is not the kind of city or the kind of city life that I enjoy. So I would probably go to Chonburi in Bangsan, where my dad grew up. But my mother lives also just outside of Bangkok, so I could see myself like going back and forth there, traveling quite a lot. But you know, so that area, Chonburi Bangsan, near my family, I would definitely go to and be near my mom as well, for Thailand. And most recently, both Matthew J. Drake and I have pondered when we were in Denmark, really being willing to be there in your old age. You know, when you don't drive anymore and you just ride a bicycle everywhere, or you just walk places and lose yourself. I could be a writer in Denmark.
It's so cold in the winter, though.
It
so
is.
Cold. I love the north. I mean, Strasbourg has this issue for me too as a California girl, but I love the northern European countries, Holland as well. But boy, does it get cold.
It gets cold, but you know what? They're really on top of a lot of that. So like just the walking around, and the feel and the safe, quiet,
oh yeah,
non-crazy feeling of walking through the city was something that we really liked, and we just kept walking around going, we could live here in our like we could not do it in our prime. We would be bored because the two of us are rabble rousers and it's terrible and we would be bad for the city. But in our retirement, we could live in
Copenhagen in particular.
In Copenhagen, yeah. And then Tokyo for me.
I was gonna say I'm gonna guess Japan is one of your highlights, because you talk about Japan quite a bit.
It's not just like the food, the people. I have friends in Japan, and again, as a writer, I could live there and be working on that salary and not have to try to survive in the Japanese corporate or job kind of situation, right? Like if we're talking about being a writer and living on that, I could definitely live in Japan, and have a very quiet life, either just somewhere in Tokyo or even outside of Tokyo in the quieter country area, and be able to travel around because they just have such a great public transportation system. And yeah, I would totally live in Tokyo, but I cannot imagine living anywhere and not being able to travel, which is why we have this podcast, because I would still want to travel for absolutely as long as I'm physically able, at least some of the time.
And on that note, let's close this episode out, shall we?
Yes.
Thank you to John Anelio, who loaned us the music from his song, Steampunk Girl.
Thanks to Kelly of Aethernautica, who cleaned this audio.
And I just lost the... Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please consider leaving us reviews on iTunes, and we'll love you forever.
This has been Piper J. Drake.
And Gail Carriger. Travel smart.
Pack the snacks.
Or learn to cook.
Nom, 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 nom. All right, I have ended my recording.
Done.
Cool.
All right.
I'm immediately exporting.
Good.
I have time, but do you have time?
Okay. Yeah. I'm getting a bit hungry, but for those of you who've been paying attention to my health struggles recently, it turns out that I am indeed lactose intolerant, sadly. And I performed the test yesterday afternoon and did not realize how much it was going to affect my digestive tract for the next 48 hours. So even though it is dinner and normally I am one of those people who has to eat immediately, I don't have to eat right now because my stomach is still like, nope, you drank a pint of milk and we don't like you anymore.
I was going to say, do you want to have a little nibble to hold you through?
Oh, there goes my phone. We might not be able to record.
We might not be able to record a third episode. Dun dun
because it
dun.
doesn't want to take the
Take the
doesn't want
charge.
to take the charge.
Uh
It
oh.
doesn't like this charger while it's in Zoom. Hold on a second. I'm gonna leave Zoom for a sec.
Okay.
Yeah, it might just be that the charge is not charging fast enough. So I'm afraid we're gonna have to stop, everybody.
I think we're gonna have to for these episodes. I think that perhaps, or for these live streams, we'll probably have to go with just 2 episodes at a time and just
Yeah,
schedule
yeah.
a little bit more
We'll just have to
frequently.
do a little bit more frequently. I agree.
I am sure that
So
all of
thanks.
you are so disappointed in that.
Yes. Thank you everybody for tuning in, though, for those few diehards out there who paid close attention to us. Yeah, we were gonna talk a little. We are gonna do another episode, which I guess we'll do in the future on what we take for entertainment when we travel, like what devices and stuff, and how we entertain ourselves. But we'll leave that for a future episode. Um,
Yeah,
but
and
yes, before my phone dies, we better do our bye byes.
what I'm probably gonna do is I will split this recording. So in addition to the Facebook Live, I will be these to YouTube. But I'll split them in half so that's one episode and the other. They'll just be random split. I'm not
Perfect.
doing any edits, so
Yes. Yeah, and
you get the
yeah,
raw unedited.
I'm planning on doing a blog post in the not too distant future with some of my picks for evocative television and movies and books of places. So look for that eventually when I get around to it. Right now I have 2 books I'm trying to launch to the world, so that's sort of taking priority over everything else.
As it should.
As it should, as it
All
needs
right.
to.
It was lovely as always. I
Yes, my
miss you, my friend.
darling. I miss you too. And I want to go to Thailand.
We're gonna plan it as soon
We're
as
going.
it's feasible. We're gonna do the thing.
Yes,
We will.
yes. I think I might come as a third wheel. Mac was like, "Why don't you
No,
go first? And then if we really like it, I'll go again another time." And I was like, "Sure, that sounds great. By all
that's
means."
fine. I mean, we could just go, the two of us go, but the advantage of having
Yeah.
Matthew with us is he can carry our
No,
stuff.